The warning bells echoed through the curved halls of the Starlight Alliance's monitoring station. Red lights flashed across the smooth pearl-white walls as operators rushed to their stations. In the central command room, the massive display screen showed a strange energy signature at the edge of their star system. First Speaker Gray's inner eyelids flickered rapidly as he studied the readings. His silver-tinted skin reflected the pulsing emergency lights as he leaned forward, four-fingered hands gripping the edge of the control panel. The energy signature was unlike anything their sensors had recorded in the past 100 cycles. "Report," he ordered, his translator converting his melodic language into something the other Alliance species could understand. The three races that made up the Alliance had worked together for so long that such translations were now seamless. The sensor operator, a younger member of Gray's species, worked quickly at his station. Unknown vessel detected entering the system. First Speaker. Its size. The operator paused, rechecking the readings. Its size exceeds our largest ships by at least 3 times. Commander Blue stepped forward, her scaled skin darkening with concern. As the military leader of the Alliance forces, she had seen her share of unknown contacts, but something about this one made her combat instincts fire all at once. "Show me the visual feed." The main screen shifted, and collective gasps filled the room. The vessel was dark, angular, and bristling with what could only be weapon systems. Its hull bore scars of recent battles, and occasional energy flares sparked along its length, suggesting damaged systems. "Match the configuration against our database," Gray ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. Deep in his core, he already knew what they would find. 5 cycles ago, their most advanced scientific vessel had encountered a similar ship. That encounter had ended with their ship being reduced to scattered atoms. The database confirmed his fears. "It's them," Blue said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It's a human warship." Gray's memories flashed back to the reports from that day. Their scientific mission, approaching what they thought was an uninhabited system, had been met with overwhelming force. They had tried to communicate, to explain their peaceful intentions, but the humans had interpreted their approach as hostile. The Alliance had learned 2 terrible things that day. They were not alone in the galaxy, and they were far from being the most advanced species. "Alert all civilian vessels," Blue commanded. "Order them to fall back to defensive positions behind the third moon, and get me a direct line to the defense fleet." The command center erupted into controlled chaos as orders were relayed and ships began to move. Gray watched the tactical display as green dots representing their civilian ships began to retreat. The massive red dot that marked the human vessel continued its steady advance into the system. "First Speaker," a communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the human ship. The translation matrix is having difficulty processing it." "Let me hear it," Gray ordered. The room fell silent as garbled sounds filled the air. The translation matrix struggled, converting only pieces of the message. "Requesting. Damaged systems. Emergency. Not hostile." Blue's scales rippled with skepticism. It could be a trap. "Remember what happened last time we trusted their messages." Gray studied the tactical display again. The human ship's approach was direct, making no attempt to hide its presence. Energy readings showed multiple systems operating at reduced power. If this was an attack, it was unlike any strategy they had ever encountered. "Begin charging the defense grid," Gray decided, "but do not target their vessel yet. If they truly need help," he let the thought hang in the air. "And if they don't?" Blue asked quietly. Gray's inner eyelids closed fully for a moment. "Then we must hope our defenses have improved enough in the past 5 cycles to matter. Because if they haven't, there's very little we can do against a human warship." The massive vessel continued its approach, its scared hull telling stories of battles they could only imagine. Around it, space itself seemed to darken, as if nature itself recognized the arrival of something to be feared. In the command center, Gray and his staff could only watch and wait, hoping they were not about to witness the beginning of their civilization's end. Captain James Stone stood at the viewport of HMS Retribution's bridge, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. The alien system spread out before him, its twin suns casting long shadows across his face. 5 years of war against the swarm had left their mark, not just on his ship, but on every surviving human vessel. "Old Thunder, status report," he called out. The ship's air responded in its characteristic deep rumble, a voice that had earned it its nickname among the crew. Multiple hull breaches on decks 3 through 7 remained sealed but unstable. Main reactor operating at 63% capacity. Long-range sensors detect 17 vessels attempting to conceal themselves behind the system's third moon. The AI paused before adding, "Their engine signatures match those of the diplomatic vessel we encountered in the Martinez system." Stone's jaw tightened. The Martinez system incident had been a disaster. A tragic misunderstanding that had almost sparked a war with an unknown alien civilization. His ship had been patrolling for swarm activity when they detected what appeared to be one of their scout vessels. By the time they realized their mistake, the alien ship was already breaking apart from the force of their weapons. "Show me tactical," Stone ordered. A holographic display materialized in front of him, showing the positions of every detected ship in the system. The alien vessels were clustered defensively, their movement patterns suggesting both fear and military training. Engineering Officer Miller's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, the quantum drive's radiation leak is getting worse. We need to power down the remaining systems or risk a cascade failure." Stone watched as another warning light joined the dozens already illuminating his command console. The Retribution had barely escaped their last encounter with the swarm, using their experimental quantum sealing weapon to close the ruptures behind them. But the cost had been steep. Their ship was now barely holding together. "Old Thunder, what's the status of our translation systems?" "Operating at minimal efficiency, Captain. The universal translator was damaged in the last battle. I estimate only 30% of our transmissions are being properly converted." A young officer at the communications station spoke up. "Sir, we're picking up energy signatures from the surface of several planets. They're powering up some kind of defense grid." Stone moved to the center of the bridge, his boots making heavy sounds on the metal deck. The crew watched him, waiting. They had followed him through hell itself during the Swarm War, trusting his judgment even when retreat seemed like the only sane option. "They think we're here to attack them," he said quietly. "And our damaged systems probably look like weapons charging from their perspective." He turned to face his crew. "We need their help to repair our ship before the swarm tracks us to this system. If that happens, these aliens will face the same nightmare we've been fighting for the past 5 years." The tactical officer raised her hand. "Sir, their ships are moving. They're forming a defensive line between us and their inner system." Stone nodded slowly. "A smart move, but not enough if the swarm finds them." He straightened his uniform, a habit from his academy days. "Old Thunder, divert power from all non-essential systems to the translator. We need to make them understand." The lights on the bridge dimmed as power was redirected. Warning klaxons blared as another system failed somewhere in the massive ship's hull. "Message prepared, Captain," Old Thunder announced. "But our translator confidence is still below 40%. The risk of miscommunication remains high." Stone looked out at the alien fleet, remembering all the worlds they'd seen fall to the swarm. He couldn't let it happen again. "Send the message. And power down our weapon systems completely. Let them see we mean no harm." As the message was transmitted, the great warship's weapon ports slowly closed, and its energy signature dropped to minimal levels. In the darkness of space, the scared vessel waited, hoping that this time, fear wouldn't lead to another tragic mistake. Commander Blue watched the massive human warship power down its weapons with growing unease. In all her years of military service, she had never seen an enemy voluntarily disable their combat systems. Either this was an elaborate trap, or something else was happening. Something beyond her experience. The translation matrix struggled with another incoming message from the human vessel. The computer's best attempt at conversion filled the command center speakers. Require assistance. Pursuing enemy. Damage to systems. Warning. They're asking for help, First Speaker Gray said softly, his inner eyelids blinking in rapid succession. Their ship appears heavily damaged. Blue's scales darkened with concern. Or they want us to think that. The last time we encountered humans, they destroyed our ship without warning. We can't risk. A new alarm cut through the room. The sensor operator's hands flew across his controls. Multiple energy spikes detected in the outer system. Something's happening to space itself. On the main display, the fabric of space rippled like water disturbed by falling stones. The human ship's energy readings suddenly spiked, but not in their direction. Instead, it turned its massive bulk toward the disturbances, its damaged hull creaking audibly even through the vacuum of space. First speaker, the communications officer called out, "We're receiving a new transmission." "The humans are." He paused, checking his readings. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies, maximum power. The translation is coming through clearer now." A human voice filled the command center, its tone carrying an urgency that needed no translation. "Alliance vessels, you must withdraw to safe distance." They followed us. "The swarm is coming." "This is not a deception." "Repeat, the swarm has tracked us to your system. We can protect you, but you must trust us." Blue moved closer to the tactical display, studying the rippling distortions in space. "What are they talking about? What's the swarm?" Her question was answered as the first enemy ships emerged from the distortions. They were unlike anything the Alliance had ever seen. Biological and mechanical parts fused together in impossible ways. Each vessel looked like a twisted nightmare, their hulls covered in writhing tendrils and pulsing with sickly green energy. "By the ancient stars," Gray whispered, taking an involuntary step back. "Look at their size, their numbers." More swarm ships continued to emerge from the spatial distortions. The human warship's engines flared to life, taking up a defensive position between the emerging threat and the Alliance fleet. Its previously dark weapon ports began to glow with energy again. "All civilian ships, emergency jump to safe harbors," Blue commanded, her military training taking over. "Defense fleet, move to support positions. Power all weapons and shields." The sensor operator's voice shook as he reported, "Reading 40 swarm vessels. Their weapons are unlike anything in our database. Energy signatures are off the charts." The human ship's next transmission came through clearly. "Alliance Command, we have a weapon that can seal their quantum tunnels, trapping them in this system. But our ship is too damaged to survive using it. We need your help. Your shield technology might be able to protect us long enough to activate the device." Blue turned to Gray, her scales now almost black with stress. "First speaker, we need your decision. Do we trust them?" Gray studied the tactical display, watching as more swarm ships emerged from the spatial tiers. The human vessel, despite its damage, had positioned itself to protect their worlds. Its actions spoke louder than any translated words. "We trust them," Gray declared, "because if they wanted to destroy us, they could have done so already. Instead, they're offering to fight for us." He turned to Blue. "Commander, coordinate with the human vessel. Whatever they need, give it to them." As the Alliance fleet moved to support the human warship, the swarm vessels began to advance. The space between the two forces crackled with energy, and in the command center, every being present knew that the next few moments would determine the fate of their civilization. Science Officer White rushed through the curving corridors of the Alliance Command Center, clutching an ancient data crystal in his trembling hands. His research team had been studying the artifacts left behind by the precursors, the mysterious species that had inhabited their system thousands of years ago. Now those ancient warnings suddenly made terrible sense. He burst into the command center just as the first shots were exchanged between the human warship and the approaching swarm vessels. The massive view screen showed streams of energy fire lighting up space like artificial lightning. First speaker, Commander. White called out, his usually calm voice shaking with excitement. The human ship. I know why its energy signature seemed familiar. Gray and Blue turned from the tactical display, where they had been coordinating with the human vessel. The swarm ships were moving in a strange pattern, trying to surround both fleets while maintaining their connection to the spatial rifts they had emerged from. Speak quickly, White. Blue ordered, her scales shifting color as another blast rocked the command center. The Alliance's shields were holding, but the swarm's weapons were like nothing they had ever faced before. White held up the crystal. The precursors left warnings about an enemy that nearly destroyed them. They called them the Devourers, beings that consumed everything in their path, turning organic and mechanical material into twisted versions of themselves. He activated the crystal, and ancient symbols filled the air above it. But they also spoke of potential saviors. They said only those who forged their path in fire could stop the Devourers' return. A massive explosion lit up the view screen as the human warship destroyed 3 swarm vessels with a single shot. Its targeting systems were incredible, far more advanced than anything the Alliance possessed. The energy signature of their weapons, White continued, pointing at the display. It matches exactly with what the precursors described. The humans. They must be the ones the prophecy spoke of. The human ship's next transmission crackled through the command center. Alliance Command, our quantum sealing device is charged to 60%. But we're detecting power fluctuations in our containment field. We won't survive triggering it without additional shielding. Gray studied the ancient symbols still floating above White's crystal. The precursors knew. They knew someone would come to help us fight this enemy. He turned to Blue. Commander, order all ships to form a defensive sphere around the human vessel. Concentrate our shield power to protect them while they prepare their weapon. Blue's scales rippled with determination as she relayed the orders. The Alliance fleet moved with practiced precision, their ships creating a protective barrier around the massive human warship. The swarm vessels pressed their attack, their twisted forms seemingly drawn to the energy building up within the human ship. Inside the HMS Retribution, Captain Stone watched as the alien fleet surrounded his ship. Old Thunder, status of the quantum sealer. 75% charged, Captain. But our containment field is failing. Even with Alliance shields, we have only a 40% chance of surviving the activation. Stone's jaw set firmly as he watched more swarm ships emerge from the spatial rifts. The Alliance worlds have billions of inhabitants. We didn't fight our way across half the galaxy to let the swarm take another civilization. He opened a channel to all ships. Alliance vessels, this is Captain Stone. When we activate our weapon, there will be a massive energy surge. No matter what happens to us, maintain your shield coverage. The swarm must not be allowed to escape this system. In the Alliance Command Center, Gray watched as the human warship's power readings climbed higher. The precursor's symbols still floated in the air, their ancient warning now a source of hope. Perhaps this was why their long-vanished predecessors had chosen this system. They knew that one day it would become the battleground where the Devourers finally met their match. The space around the combined fleet lit up with constant weapons fire as the swarm pressed their attack. Inside the HMS Retribution, warning lights flashed across every console as the ship's systems struggled to maintain power to the quantum sealing device. Emergency repair crews rushed through smoke-filled corridors, trying to keep their vessel together for just a few minutes longer. Hull breach on Deck 5. Old Thunder's voice boomed through the bridge. Emergency force fields are holding, but structural integrity is down to 28%. Captain Stone gripped his command chair as another blast rocked the ship. Through the main viewport, he watched the Alliance vessels maintain their protective formation around the Retribution, their shield technology proving remarkably effective against the swarm's attacks. But with each passing moment, more enemy ships emerged from the spatial rifts. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "we're detecting power fluctuations in the Alliance shields. They can't maintain this level of protection much longer. Stone opened a channel to the Alliance Command Center. First speaker, Commander, our weapon is almost ready. But there's something you need to know. He paused, watching another swarm ship explode under the combined fire of their fleets. The quantum sealer doesn't just close their entry points. It creates a cascade effect through their entire network. Any swarm ship connected to their quantum web will be trapped in normal space, cut off from their ability to travel between systems. In the Alliance Command Center, Blue's scales paled as she understood the implications. Their whole invasion force would be trapped here. We would have to fight them all. Better here than letting them spread across the galaxy, Gray responded, his inner eyelids closing fully as he made his decision. Captain Stone, the Alliance stands with you. Whatever the cost, we will not let these devourers threaten another world. The Retribution's engineering officer's voice crackled over the ship's comm. Captain, the containment field is failing. If we don't activate the sealer now, we'll lose our only chance. Stone looked at his bridge crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that had carried them through 5 years of war. All hands, brace for emergency power transfer. Old Thunder, divert all remaining power to the quantum sealer. That includes life support and artificial gravity. The lights on the bridge dimmed to almost nothing as power was rerouted. Through the viewport, Stone watched as more swarm ships emerged from the spatial rifts, their twisted forms blocking out the stars themselves. In the Alliance Command Center, Science Officer White's eyes widened as he studied the readings from the human ship, the energy buildup. It's matching exactly what the precursors described in their final records. They tried to create this same weapon, but couldn't stabilize it. Quantum sealer at maximum charge, Old Thunder announced, its usual thundering voice now barely more than a whisper as it diverted power from every system. Activating in 10 seconds. 9. 8. Commander Blue ordered all Alliance ships to divert emergency power to their shields. The protective barrier around the Retribution glowed brighter, holding back the swarm's increasingly desperate attacks. 7. 6. 5. First Speaker Gray watched the tactical display as even more swarm ships poured through the rifts. Their numbers now exceeded anything the Alliance had ever faced. If this failed, there would be no escape for anyone. 4. 3. 2. Captain Stone took one last look at the stars beyond the viewport. Whatever happens next, he transmitted to both fleets, it has been an honor to fight alongside you. 1. Quantum sealer activating. A blinding light erupted from the heart of the human warship, spreading outward like a newborn star. The Alliance's shields bent and warped under the strain, their technology pushed beyond its designed limits as they tried to contain the awesome energies being released. The swarm ships closest to the Retribution began to break apart, their twisted forms unable to withstand the quantum forces being unleashed. The wave of quantum energy spread outward from the Retribution like ripples in a pond, each pulse growing stronger instead of weaker. The swarm ships caught in its path twisted and distorted as their connection to their quantum network was violently severed. The spatial rifts they had used to enter the system began to collapse, their edges crackling with lightning-like discharges. Inside the Alliance Command Center, Science Officer White stared at his readings in amazement. The human weapon. It's not just closing the rifts, it's rewriting the laws of space itself in this region. The swarm's method of faster-than-light travel won't work here anymore. First Speaker Gray watched as the quantum wave reached the outer edges of their system. What about the human ship? Are they? Commander Blue's scales shifted to a deep blue of concern as she studied the tactical display. The Retribution floated motionless at the center of their defensive formation, its hull dark and silent. The Alliance shields around it flickered weakly, strained almost to breaking by the energies they had contained. Their power readings are almost non-existent, Blue reported, but I'm detecting faint life signs. They're still alive in there, barely. The remaining swarm ships, cut off from their network and unable to escape, turned their full fury on the combined fleet. Their weapons fire intensified, becoming more desperate and erratic with each passing moment. They know they're trapped, Blue said, her military training helping her understand their enemy's mindset. They'll fight to the death now. Gray's inner eyelids flickered rapidly as he made his decision. Then we'll give them exactly what they want. All ships, defensive formation Delta. Protect the human vessel at all costs. They've given us the chance to end this threat here and now. The Alliance fleet moved with newfound determination. Ships that had once flowed in terror from a single human vessel now fought with incredible courage against dozens of swarm ships. Their advanced shields, combined with weapons and tactics developed over centuries of peace, proved surprisingly effective against the trapped enemy. Aboard the Retribution, emergency power slowly returned to critical systems. Captain Stone regained consciousness to find his bridge bathed in the red glow of backup lighting. His crew lay scattered across the deck where they had fallen when artificial gravity failed. "Old Thunder," he called out weakly. "Status report." The eye's voice came through as little more than a whisper, its systems running on minimal power. "Quantum sealer discharge successful, Captain. All swarm quantum tunnels have been collapsed. Primary power is offline. Life support operating at 12% capacity." But there was an unusual pause. "Sir, you should see this." The main viewport flickered to life, showing the space around them. The Alliance fleet had formed a perfect defensive sphere around the Retribution, their ships moving with practiced precision as they engaged the trapped swarm vessels. One by one, the twisted enemy ships were being destroyed, unable to withstand the combined firepower of two civilizations fighting for survival. "They're protecting us," Stone said softly, a smile crossing his tired face. "After everything they feared about us, they're still protecting us." A weak transmission came through the bridge speakers, the translation still rough but understandable. "Human vessel, this is Commander Blue. Your ship is damaged but safe. Rest now. Let us show you that we too know how to fight for those who would give their lives to protect others." Stone watched as another swarm ship exploded under Alliance fire. The species that had once run from them in terror was now fighting with a skill and courage that would have made any human proud. Perhaps the precursors had known more than anyone realized, not just about the swarm, but about how fear could turn into trust, and trust into something even stronger. 3 days after the quantum sealer's activation, the last swarm ship exploded in a brilliant flash of green fire. The combined Alliance and human forces had fought without rest, systematically destroying every trapped enemy vessel. Now, as the final traces of battle faded from space, both civilizations faced a moment they had never expected: peace between them. The Retribution floated in high orbit around the Alliance homeworld, its battle-scarred hull now surrounded by repair crews from both species. Alliance engineering teams marveled at human technology while helping restore power to the massive warship. Human crew members, in turn, found themselves amazed by the elegant efficiency of Alliance shield systems. In the Alliance's grand meeting chamber, Captain Stone stood before the full council, his uniform cleaned but still bearing the marks of battle. First Speaker Gray and Commander Blue sat at the center of the curved table, their expressions showing none of the fear that had gripped them just days ago. "The swarm has been trying to reach this region of space for years," Stone explained, his voice now properly translated by repaired systems. "Your system sits at a crucial junction of quantum space lanes. If they had taken this position, nothing could have stopped them from spreading across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy." White, newly promoted to Chief Science Officer, activated a holographic display showing the quantum mapping of nearby space. "The human weapon didn't just save us," he added excitedly. "It created a permanent barrier. The precursor's prophecy spoke of this, a shield of altered space that would forever protect the younger races from the devourers." Blue's scales rippled with a new color, one that humans would later learn meant deep respect. "We feared you because we didn't understand. When we first met your kind, we thought your power meant you must be conquerors. Now we know that strength can exist to protect, not just to destroy. Both our peoples were doing what we thought necessary to survive." Gray said, rising from his seat. But together, we've done something neither of us could have achieved alone. The question now is, what do we do with this understanding? Stone smiled, reaching into his pocket to pull out a small data crystal. A human one. Its technology distinctly different from Alliance designs. My government anticipated this moment. Inside this crystal are plans for an exchange program. We would share our weapon technologies, and you would teach us about your shield systems. Together, we could create defenses that neither the swarm nor any other threat could overcome. The chamber filled with excited murmuring as council members discussed the possibility. Gray raised his hands for silence, his inner eyelids blinking rapidly in what humans would come to recognize as joy. Captain Stone, when your ship first appeared in our system, we thought it was our darkest hour. Instead, it became the moment that changed everything. He turned to address the full council. The precursors didn't just warn us about the devourers. They told us to watch for those who would light the darkness with fire, not to fear them, but to join them. Stone looked out the chamber's wide windows at the stars above. Somewhere out there, the swarm was still fighting, still consuming. But now, for the first time, they would face something they had never expected. Two civilizations working as one, combining the best of both their kinds. Fear gripped us when we first saw each other, Blue said, standing to face Stone. But fear turned to trust, and trust has become something greater. Let this day be remembered not as the end of a battle, but as the beginning of a friendship that will change the galaxy. As Stone shook hands with Gray and Blue, sealing their new alliance, he couldn't help but smile at the irony. His ship had arrived in this system heavily damaged, expecting to find only brief shelter. Instead, they had found something far more valuable, proof that the greatest victories come not from power alone, but from learning to overcome fear and work together.